Hello, welcome to Lil's Vintage World. This video is a book review of Army Without Banners by Anne Stafford. This book was first published in 1942 and has recently been republished by Handheld Press for the modern reader. I very kindly received this copy for review, so thank you Handheld Press for kindly sending it to me. I really enjoyed it. I think lots of you will really enjoy it too, so let's talk about it. So, when I heard about this book and the idea that this book was going to be republished, I was really excited simply because of the name Anne Stafford. So Anne Stafford was also part of this book, which you might have heard me talk about before. So this is Business as Usual. This was by Jane Oliver and Anne Stafford, and this is a novel from the 1930s. I really love it. It has illustrations. It's about it's written in letter form, I think, for the most part, but it's got other bits in it, and it's about this girl from Scotland who comes to London, I think, and she works at a big department store and she's writing letters back home. It's wonderful and you should read it. You know, it's one of their most well purchased, I guess, most popular books from Handheld Press, and it's wonderful and I love it so much. I'd like to read it again soon, actually. So simply on hearing the name Anne Stafford, I was like, oh, I'd like to read more, because I haven't read anything else by Anne Stafford, or Jane Oliver for that fact, other than Business as Usual. And as I said, I love that one. So on hearing this, I was like, oh yes, I really want to get to it. So I was so pleased when I was kindly sent a copy. This book is a wartime novel, published in wartime, set in wartime, and it is about a woman called Mildred Gibson, she becomes to be known as Gibbsy, affectionately, who at the beginning of the novel, when we first meet her, she's living in the countryside, she's middle-aged, she has a grown-up son, she has a husband, they're off doing war work, and she is at home still doing war work, like she's doing like knitting and things like that, things that she can do for the cause in her local area. But then she receives this letter from her cousin Daphne, which says essentially like, if you want to do some war work, it's here for you if you want. I am driving the ambulance. I'm part of the, driving the ambulances and all that. And if you want to come, they're always after drivers, which you can drive. So if you want to come to London, ta-da. And Mrs. Gibson thinks it over and she decides ultimately, actually, yes, that is what I'm going to go and do. I am going to go to London, and off she goes. She goes to London. She stays with her cousin in her house that has become completely disorientated with the war as common practice. And she does her driving test to see if she can drive the ambulances, and off we go into London Blitz and the realities of it, because the realities of the Blitz is, yes, there were bombings, and yes, there were a lot of casualties and a lot of sacrifices and a lot of mess and aftershock and all these things, but there was also times where Gibbsy herself says she's really bored, and there's actual times in this where she's kind of feeling guilty in a way because there isn't the work that's needed for them at the moment. Like, bombs weren't being dropped 24/7 for the entirety of the war. It comes in dribs and drabs, doesn't it? It comes in spells. So there were times where she was like, well, I could be better. My time could be spent benefiting others. My time could be spent better. And actually there's time later on in the novel where after they've done doing everything that they could, like all the cleaning and stuff that they could possibly do, that they go to other like women's voluntary services and just like have a nosy about. So you get to learn a bit more about those of other services in which women were doing at the time. But of course we do also see the horrors that you would expect to see as an ambulance driver during the Blitz of London. It was quite difficult reading actually, but it was written so beautifully as well, this complete horror, which was, so Gibbsy is waiting by the ambulance, and she's like, look, I'm gonna go and help, I'm gonna go help. So she's walking and she sees this boot and she's like, oh, it's all shiny, I wonder if someone's lost it. And then she sees this body and it's just lying there all still, and she's like, well, no one can help that person's already obviously died, and it's very sad, and someone's putting a sheet over the person. And she's walking with this shoe, and then she realizes that actually there is still a foot in the shoe. Like, obviously the bomb has gone and a person has become not as one, so to speak, and she realizes, and then she just vomits, and it's just the reality of what they would have seen is horrific. But it's told in a way which, it's hard to read, but it wasn't gruesome to read. It was just like, you can bet that that is true. And the thing about Anne Stafford is, if you read the introduction of this, you've learned that Anne Stafford, actually, this book is completely, you know, partly fiction, but also it is completely partly memoir. You know, this is part of what Anne Stafford got up to during the war, and the ideas and the notions of being bored, you know, can really only come from someone that has done the job and knows what it feels like. But also the harrowing things that you see can also only come from someone that's been in that situation. So it's a book that is touching. It's a book that is hard to read in terms of the subject matter, but not hard to read in terms of the language. It actually flows so beautifully. I've read it really rather quickly. As soon as it arrived, I kind of delved into it, and I want to read you a little bit because I think it's just done so wonderfully. It is kind of laid out a bit like, oh, it's like a diary, I suppose. So chapter 1 is October of 1940. And the bit that I want to read you is right at the beginning. It's only page 5. I was putting little tabs in of like, oh, where can I stop and read? And I ended up with so many tabs. I was like, no, just pick one early on. So this bit I think is really lovely, because I think you get not just a sense of the writing style, but how Anne Stafford approaches talking about war, essentially. So this is the bit that I'm going to read to you, is the bit where Gibbsy has received the letter from her cousin and she's kind of mulling over whether she should go and do war work or not. But they weren't just casualties anymore, statistics on official form, items in a news bulletin. There were people like Daphne, men and women that Daphne and I had passed in the street, who kept little shops where we bought cigarettes and cabbages and newspapers, who sold us tickets to cinemas and concerts, fitted us with shoes and frocks and hats, coughed over us in buses, sat beside us in theatres, music halls, and laughed at the same jokes. I think there is something almost poetic about the writing style of this book. It feels very truthful, it feels very raw, it feels very real, but then there is this beautiful, almost poetic writing that goes with it, and it just flows so beautifully, and it makes a difficult topic such an easy but important read. So that is why I think you should read it. Anyway, so that is my review for Army Without Banners by Anne Stafford. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you again to Handheld Press for very kindly sending me a copy. Really enjoyed it. Would love to read more Anne Stafford again in the future. So let me know in the comments section if this book is on your wish list, whether you're going to pick it up, whether this sounds up your street, let me know. Or if you've read it, let me know what you thought of it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care, and I shall see you soon for the next one. Bye for now.